Order. Welcome to the Radnor Township School District Business Meeting for September 25th, 2018. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and the first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all. All right, second item on the agenda is the report from executive session. The board met on September 11th and again tonight before this meeting to discuss items of personnel. And that brings us to the report from our students. Welcome.
Close enough. Okay. Hello, everyone. It's been quite a while since we've been here with all of you, and we look forward to getting back into the swing of things. There are a lot of new installments in Radnor High School news. First, our school year has officially begun. The freshmen have adjusted and figured out their schedules, and all facets of the school are up and running. Our ID pictures have been taken, our health screenings are completed, and even some of our first tests are over with. Outside of school, however, our students still have many accomplishments to be proud of. After enduring a brutal preseason, which I can attest to, our sports teams are doing very well. The boys soccer team is off to a great season with 6 wins, a single loss, and a single tie. Additionally, the football team was recently defeated for the first and only time so far this season by Haverford High School last Friday. Girls field hockey is 2-3 right now and is shaping up to be a very strong team. Lots of players are even getting offers from college coaches, and some seniors are beginning to hear back from colleges that offer rolling admissions or early action application submissions. In other news, we are beginning to plan our upcoming LM Spirit Week and Pep Rally, which all students are incredibly excited for.
During the first few weeks of school, 17 Radnor students have already been recognized for their outstanding academic achievements. These students have been named National Merit Semifinalists for the 2019 program. The nationwide pool of semifinalists represents less than 1% of all U.S. high school seniors that took the PSAT last fall. The process to become a finalist is very complicated and lengthy, and we wish the best of luck to our classmates on their academic journey. Last week, Radnor hosted their annual college planning night for seniors and parents. Guidance counselors discussed the college planning process, the application process, and gave an overview of Naviance, the college planning platform that Radnor provides. Overall, it was a great night filled with excellent information and guidance. This Thursday, September 27th, the activities fair will take place during an extended community period. Tables will be set up throughout the lobby and cafeteria so students can find a club or organization that is right for them. Thank you so much for having us, and have a great night.
Thank you very much. And that brings us to the report from our superintendent. Mr. Batchelor?
Good evening. It's good to see everyone. It's nice to have so many of our students with us here tonight. I know we have many of our artists and scholars here with us tonight for some recognition, so thank you for making the time to join us, especially on such a rainy night. We apologize for our delay in starting as well, and those board members who couldn't make it tonight apologize for not being here. As our students mentioned, our year is off to a great start. Our last meeting, we met together and before the school had actually begun, and school has now begun, and we are in full swing of activities, academics, programming, and it's been a wonderful start. You can see from some of the pictures there from the start of school. On the next slide, I did have a little video I just want to share with everyone, share with the board quickly. It's a quick video from the first day of school that our communications department helped put together. Thank you, Mr. Petiti and the Communications Department for all the help, and I know Mrs. Crone, Nikki helped, and Elsa Gangle as well in putting that together. We are off to a great start. It was a great first day. I want to thank all the administrators and staff and faculty for everything they've done, and parents, those parents that are here with us. Getting ready for that first day can be, there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of planning, and we're happy to have the year underway and moving forward. There was an unusual thing in that video that you might have seen that I realized we haven't seen in a while. There's this really bright thing in the background, the sun. I realized as I'm watching that video, I'm like, gosh, we have not seen the sun in the last few days. October events, I've just listed here for the board to see and posted that there's a lot of events, as our students shared with us. There's a lot of things that are coming up in the fall that we're getting busy. And that concludes my remarks, since I will have an opportunity to talk about goals and go into further discussion about our district goals later in the meeting.
All right, thank you, Mr. Batchelor. And that brings us to recognitions. And the first recognition is for the 17 high school students that were named to the National Merit Scholarship Semifinalists. And Ms. Bonenberger?
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thanks.
It's such a pleasure to read this. Okay. Congratulations to Radnor High School students. This doesn't have a header, so I'm just going to jump ahead if you don't mind. This is for the 17 Radnor High School students who were named the 2019 National Merit Scholarship Semifinalists. So, congratulations. Please come up as I call your name. Congratulations to Radnor High School students Nicholas Camposano, Adrian Chung, Priya Ganesh, Sasha He, Grace Henderson, Patrick Caper Barcelata, Michael Kerwer, Gun-hee Lee, Hiromichi Nagayumi, Aisha Permar, Joseph Pevner, Douglas Rosen, Julia Shee, Alexander Skvortsov, Joshua Wu, and Max Hsu, and recent RHS graduate Adrian Fillardreau-Planche for being named 2019 National Merit Scholarship Semifinalists by the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. These students join approximately 16,000 high school seniors from across the United States, and they are eligible for some 7,500 scholarships worth more than $31 million. About 1.6 million juniors in more than 22,000 high schools entered the 2019 National Merit Scholarship Program by taking the 2017 preliminary SAT National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. The nationwide pool of semifinalists, representing less than 1% of U.S. high school seniors, includes the highest scoring entrants in each state. From the approximately 16,000 semifinalists, about 15,000 are expected to advance to the finalist level. They will be notified of this designation in February 2019. The superintendent, along with the board and the Radnor community, commends these students, their parents, and teachers on their outstanding accomplishment. Congratulations. Okay, so if you don't mind, after I give you your certificate, would you go shake hands, starting with Mr. Miller, and we'll go down, and then we'll go outside for a photo. Okay? Adrian? Priya? Alexander? Michael?
Sandy.
Congratulations. Josh, congratulations. That's okay. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Okay, next item on the agenda will be a presentation for the students that were involved in the creation of the Mosaic. Ms. Goldman?
Okay, so students enrolled in Eric Barrett and Tracy Dean's art classes at Radnor High School during the 2017-18 school year worked with resident teaching artist Bailey Cypress to design and create an original mosaic that was installed at the King of Prussia, Pennsylvania Turnpike Service Plaza on June 21st, 2018, and will be on display there for 5 years. It will also be seen by millions of visitors who pass through during that time. The project was part of Art Sparks, an effort by the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission and the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts to bring student-created art to service plazas across the 550-mile Pennsylvania Turnpike system, and they selected Radnor High School for the King of Prussia location. The mixed media mosaic, titled Gateway to the Main Line, is comprised of 17 medallions, each representing a mainline community surrounding the plaza. Elements include, it's up there, elements include Wayne's Anthony Wayne Theater and the Radnor High School logo. Accepting this recognition on behalf of the Radnor High School student body are, actually, I'm going to read your name, and I think some of the students may have graduated, so there are fewer here than there were in June when we were at the plaza, but Jamie Moore, and actually Tracy and Eric, if you'd like to come up as well, acknowledge your teachers. Rebecca Moore, Grace Yang, Luna Macias, Sylvan Falque, and Anush Kajuri. Oh, here we go. The superintendent, along with the board and the Radnor community, congratulates these students and their parents and teachers on this outstanding accomplishment. And if you get a chance to go to the King of Prussia Service Plaza, you should go and look. It's really quite remarkable. So, great job. You guys want to start over there with Mike Miller? Shake hands, and then we're going to give you certificates and a photo out in the lobby. That's okay. Is this your agenda, Julia? Because there's one left that was on this.
You must be so proud. I look forward to going out and seeing it. And now I'm being happy. You'll enjoy it. I will. Thank you for all
Okay, that's my favorite part of the evening, is recognizing our talented students and their teachers. But moving on to another important part of the meeting is public comment. At this time, citizens are encouraged to address the board during this portion of the meeting on the agenda or other topics related to the Radnor Township School District. Please print your name on the sign-up sheet at the table in the back of the room. Clearly state your name, street address, and the topic to be addressed. Individual comments shall be limited to not more than 4 minutes as per Board Policy 006. And should you be unable to attend this meeting, you can submit your comments by email to boardquestions@rtsd.org or in writing to Mr. Michael Petiti, Radnor Township School District, 135 South Wayne Avenue, Wayne, Pennsylvania, 19087. Administration will review your questions, and the corresponding answers will be posted on the district's Board Docs website by the start of the first committee meeting of the following month. Is there any public comment at this time?
Good evening, Roberta Winters, 326 Williams Road in Rosemont, and I would just like to commend the district and their students and their administration for supporting today, which is National Voter Registration Day. And the students took the initiative to do tabling at the high school, and we had several students register to vote. And we know everyone in Radnor needs to know that the deadline to register to vote is October 9th. But the reason we ask people to register in September is so they'll be ready in November to cast their ballots at Election Day. Also, you can still get your absentee ballots if you were going to be away on November 6th. But our students are very excited about the upcoming election and have participated fully in this event, so thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Winters.
Good evening, Cindy Spurtle, Wayne. I have a couple questions from going through a review of the minutes from the August meeting. I was unable to attend. And a couple things jumped up at me, and one of them is under personnel categories for the minutes. I wanted to know if I noticed several new teacher positions. And my question is, how did September enrollment affect the number of teachers that were hired this year? Were you able to stay within the guidelines and the budget? And also, I noticed that the new administrative organizational chart was approved by the board in August. And but the job descriptions for those positions on the organizational chart were only sent to the board. My question is, why can they not be posted online for the public to review the different job descriptions? One thing I noticed on the new organizational chart is that the part-time assistant principals for the elementary schools were replaced by a part-time administrative support person. And so I was curious as to what the job description for that individual may be. Then getting to the consent agenda, policy for first reading, the policy 006, which is about meetings and public participation. I wanted to state that the conclusion was reached by the board that if there is not time to answer questions during the meeting, and I don't remember that very many questions are ever answered during the meetings, although that is one of the alternative, and the results of a request by a subcommittee that had several meetings prior to the rewriting of this public participation policy. And in the last committee meeting last week, one board member stated that questions are never answered by the board to a request or a comment from the public during a meeting. And I wanted to remind everyone on the board that that is one of the options that are given for comments and questions made by the board. And I would hope that that would be an option that you would, if the answer to the question is a simple one, not one that would get into a controversial answer, that those answers would be forthcoming from the board so that we don't have to wait for another month in some instances, and also so that the answers to the questions aren't posted 5 minutes before the meeting. And I also wanted to go through also part of the consent agenda, a question on the item 10.5 Winter Varsity Athletic Supply Bids, 10.5 on the consent agenda. A question on the approval of a bid submitted by Longstretch Sporting Goods, and wondered if that wasn't a conflict of interest per policy 826, since I believe the owner of Longstretch is a coach. Then moving further to 12.1, board approval for student trips. A concern I have is when the decision to pay for these sports trips that are listed in this week's agenda the dollars spent, I wanted to make sure that they are fairly allocated. It's quite curious that the first two trips are both to the same place for the same amount of time, to Hershey, PA, and there are one distribution or estimated cost is $500 for 5 students, which works out to $100 per student. The other request is for $1,000, which works out to $166, a little more than that per student. And the reason for that, and then I also had a curious question. If you've known me in the questions I've asked many years in the past, I look into the numbers, and I know we're talking small dollars, but I'm curious as to the Radnor High School boys basketball trip to Orlando. There's quite a discrepancy in the, there is one extra day. I understand it's 3 versus 4 days, but the amount that's requested from the students is actually $300 more than the cost of the trip per student. And that kind of piqued my interest. So if that, if you have time or can answer those questions sooner than the next meeting, that would be important to me. And also one other, we've talked about the sleep study, and I believe a question was asked in last month's meeting as to the when the final decision will be forthcoming on the sleep study that's been going on for quite a long time. And my understanding is it's November 20th. I just wanted to make sure, because during one of the committee meetings, one of the policies that's up for its second reading, which means it'll be its final approval, is the student wellness policy. And it was suggested that included in that policy would be a educating the students not only on proper nutrition and physical activities, but it was suggested that also the proper sleep patterns or going to bed early was something that could be added. I've only got 2 minutes, or 2 seconds. I think it's important that this be added. My understanding is, as a result of the committee meeting, that this may be added depending on the decision of the sleep study, and I just want to make sure that several of the board members were in agreement that sleep should be included in that wellness policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bertle.
Hi, my name is Chris Henkel. I'm a junior at Radnor High School, and I'm here today to discuss an action that that would improve the accessibility of the RHS Prevost and Enke Field bleachers. And we have attended the board facility committee meetings and understand that these same services were offered over a year ago. We were further disappointed to hear that investments like paint have been made in that same year. The time for cosmetic improvements has passed. We're excited to participate in the design process as has been offered, and it is our hope that the board will consider this an opportunity to create a plan for full accessibility to event spectators. We understand that a comprehensive plan may take phases of funding to implement, but without a full plan, safety and accessibility will not be achieved. Today we received the verbal support of Representative Alex Charlton in any pursuit of state funding to achieve accessibility. Thank you for taking this important step in making RHS a place that my brother, who passed away in January of last year, could safely attend. We'll be with you the whole way. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Judy Sherry, Governor's Circle, Newtown Square. According to the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, at the heart of the commitment of a school board director is the fundamental concept of local lay control of public education. School boards provide local citizen control over education at a point as close to the parent and child as possible. Local school boards keep the public schools in the possession of the public rather than central government, professional educators, and private corporations. School boards are a check on a propriety interest of the professionals and thus carry out the American precept of checks and balances. This concept is somewhat unique to America. These are pretty much all quotes from the School Boards Association's books. Related to this, do you board members agree with the School Boards Association and believe in local lay control of education? Tonight's agenda states under public comment, administration will review questions and the corresponding answers will be posted on the District Board Docs website by the start of the first committee meeting of the following month. This is a bad idea for many reasons. One, it totally abdicates the board's responsibility to represent the Radnor public to the administration. Are board members okay with doing that? Two, last week, questions and answers posed by the public were finally posted right before the scheduled committee meetings, allowing no time for the public to review them and no time for the board to review them. Are board members satisfied with this process? Which of you ran for school board elections stating to voters, come into meetings and bring forward your questions and concerns, we'll sit silent and then pass them along to the administration. The administration may provide you with a written response, not reviewed by us, 5 minutes before the next committee meeting in 2 weeks. 3, are you following your own policy with this practice? Ms. Bertle pointed out in a policy committee meeting that RTSD policy 006, which is on the agenda tonight and is very restrictive, still states if questions are asked of the board that can be answered without unduly delaying the meeting, the presiding officer may choose to answer the question, refer the question to the superintendent, or lastly, indicate how the questions may be answered after the conclusion of the meeting. Will this policy of responding to questions be followed in the future? If they know the answers, why wouldn't the board and administration want to respond to the public's questions and concerns immediately, rather than waiting for weeks to go by before an answer is posted and may not be relevant? 4, at what public meeting was this process of written responses voted on by the board, and who voted for it? 5, will the district name the individual administrator who is accountable for the different responses posted on the website? 6, will the district post the date and time the response was posted? For example, one of the responses was posted before the meeting occurred, where the information was actually presented. 7, a number of the responses were disappointing and require being asked again. Is the board satisfied with all the answers posted? On other matters, why hasn't the school board requested that the administration update it on specific impact of damages, both structurally and financially, due to township flooding? How can the school board improve communication between the district and the township so that the district knows to plan on attending township meetings that involve issues affecting the district, like stormwater, traffic, trails, open space, artificial turf, etc.? Is the board satisfied with the fact that the district's website currently states under About RTSD, Points of Pride?
I'm sorry, Ms. Sherry, you're at 4 minutes,
I'm just finishing
please.
this up.
Thank you.
Points of Pride. This is limited to just including rankings by outside sources, and all the achievement data listed is from 2015. That's something that people that don't live here will look to find out information about our district. And I brought that to the attention of the board in one of the meetings, and nothing's changed since then. So is the board satisfied with that? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sherry. Is there any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, that brings us into reports from our committees. The first committee report is the Curriculum Committee. The Curriculum Committee met as a special committee board meeting of the whole board on September 11th. And the main topic of discussion was the presentation of our Radnor Middle School program evaluation. This was an extremely thorough presentation covering an assessment really of the goals for the middle school, which include curriculum, both the core and encore courses, differentiated instruction, communication, empowering staff, and preserving instructional time. I am condensing these goals down to brief snippets. The panel of people presenting to us included administrators and teachers, and they did an extremely thorough dive in gathering data really over a year from parents, students, previous students, teachers, and then, of course, the usual assessment of our scores and pulling all of this information together to formulate action items moving forward. So that was the main topic for our September meeting. And then, in addition, you will see on the agenda tonight items including overnight trips and clubs that were presented in committee meeting for our consent agenda. Thank you. The next committee
That would be me.
would be facilities. Mr. Miller.
So facilities met on September 11, and we had a short meeting, informative meeting. It's on YouTube, on our still newfangled YouTube website, thanks to Mr. Mertiti, which is working great. We discussed replacing the van, and that was flooded out. We had a 30-second update on the trail. Talked about the solar panels on top of the Radnor Elementary School, and we talked about the high school bleachers, which I believe on the consent agenda, we're hiring the architect to do some preliminary design work there. So that was it for that committee.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Finance, Ms. Stern.
Yes, thank you. The Finance Committee also met September 11th. We had a pretty quick meeting. There's a number of action items on the agenda tonight that we discussed at our Finance Committee meeting, one of which is we'll be taking a vote on the PSBA officers tonight. In addition, we had some items for approval, the items to be disposed, some IDEA pass-through money and Section 619 money, as well as there was a discussion around there was a brief discussion around the food service vendors and some questions about that, and that information is actually available at the request of the business office and was provided to some members of the public who asked it. In addition, we had a conversation about the Citizens Advisory Committee. I know that they met last week with you, Mr. Batchelor, and we continue to feel that their work in conjunction with the business office and the value that they provide to the administration with some particular projects have been very helpful, and that will continue. And I know that you met with them to kind of discuss some priority projects. Not sure which ones you're going to move on first, but I do know that there's some talk of looking at how we fund some field trips, and also, just jog my memory here, there was
Sure, we looked at field trips, contracted services.
Right.
We looked at two other items that were holdovers from last year, and the committee discussed whether or not, which items they want to begin. There's more there than they could probably do in 1 year, but again,
Right.
the goal for Citizens Advisory is to apply some of their expertise to some of these topics, to give the board then feedback on which topics should we maybe spend some more time digging deeper in,
Right.
and give us their recommendations on those.
So it was a brief conversation at our point, and our next meeting will be October 9th, I believe.
Thank you, Ms. Stern. Policy Committee, Ms. Goldman.
The Policy Committee met on September 11th, and item 13.2 on the consent agenda tonight is the second reading of the policies we presented for a first reading last month. No changes have been made to those policies since the August business meeting. If approved tonight, these 6 policies and any corresponding administrative regulations will be posted to the district website prior to our October Policy Committee meeting. Item 13.1 on the consent agenda tonight is Policy 006. This policy was also presented at the August business meeting for a first reading. Subsequent to that business meeting, it was discovered as it came up for review for our September Policy Committee meeting that there was an error in Section 10 where how a board votes to adopt, amend, or repeal a board policy was listed twice. as both requiring a 2/3 vote of the board and a majority vote of the board. It's obviously not both, and our solicitor informed us that legally it takes only a majority vote to take those actions. So therefore, his recommendation was to strike the listing of 2/3, and that change to the policy was considered a substantive enough revision that we have brought it back again tonight for a repeat first reading, and we'll bring it back for a second reading in October. October's policy committee meeting will be on Tuesday, October 16th at 6:30.
Thank you, Ms. Goldman. And Government Relations and Communication. Ms. Goldman.
Yes, Government Relations and Communications met on Tuesday, September 11th as well. Mr. Petiti provided a brief update on the status of planning for our annual legislative breakfast, which is being targeted to occur in either January or February of 2019. He also recognized the service of RHS senior Amanda Megan, who interned for the Communications Department over the summer as part of the Radnor Educational Foundation and Radnor Alumni Council's EdTernship program. We also discussed the upcoming Pennsylvania Senate and House Education Committee meetings, which took place over the past 2 days, Monday and Tuesday. And of special significance on Monday, the House Education Committee met to vote on Senate Bill 1095, which is the revamped Keystone graduation requirement bill that has already passed the Senate, and it unanimously passed through the House. Senate Bill 1095 would provide alternative pathways to high school graduation when the Keystone exam graduation requirement is reinstated in the 2020-2021 school year. It now goes on to the full Senate for a vote, and if it passes there, it will become law with the governor's signature. So many people who have had concerns about the Keystones as a singular graduation requirement will probably be interested to know that. Also on our agenda was an overview of the upcoming Pennsylvania School Board Association's annual conference, including the Delegates Assembly. Sarah, Andrew, and Chuck will be serving as Radnor's delegates, and they will vote on any proposed changes to PSBA's bylaws and PSBA's proposed 2019 legislative platform and core principles, which Sarah will go over in her liaison report for PSBA later in the meeting. GRCC meets next Tuesday, meets next on Tuesday, October 16th at 4:30.
Thank you, Ms. Goldman. And that brings us to our priority discussion action item, which is the approval of the 2018-19 school district goals. Mr. Batchelor?
Thank you. The board had an opportunity to see a list of our proposed goals for this year, and they've been posted as well to our public. The first slide here shows the document that is that was posted publicly. Obviously, you can't see it on the screen. We recognize that, but that gives further detail, and board members have this document, and it's posted publicly as well. On the next couple of slides, though, I'll summarize the goals and give you some of the details and some of the heading through it. So for 18-19 goals, we're looking at 4 goal areas, major goal areas: challenge in supporting all students, implementing technology recommendations, the review and implementation of our middle school recommendations, and the study of student wellness. At our August board meeting, we had an opportunity to hear a summary of last year's goals. And in part of that discussion, I think we had the realization, and in that discussion, the reality that some goals are going to be year-long goals, some goals are multiple-year goals, some goals could be shorter than a year. That is going to evolve over time and depending on the topic. We also had a recognition over the last couple of years, as we've talked about our goals, that our goals don't represent all that we do. We've listed each year, a list of goals and a list of priority projects, but there's also so many more things that are happening in the district that are very important tasks. Take, for example, even tonight's discussion and on our agenda tonight. While we didn't list our bleacher project and looking at the facilities as our athletic complex as a goal, because it is something that is already underway. It is something that we are involved in and we are looking at and we're going to continue with. The same thing with our Citizens Advisory Council, our committee. That is something that is now in process. While it was a goal last year, it was something that was up and running. It's now part of a practice that we have. So we didn't give it that focus as a goal, but it is still very important items. There are other really important items taking place that you might not see on the goal list. For example, the discussion we had here, I think last month, a board member asked the question about some of the papers that our families fill out at the beginning of the school year each year. Can we do those digitally? Can parents go online to take care of those things? Our technology department, our communications department, and our directors of teaching and learning are working closely to have that in place for the start of next school year. With that, we are also looking to develop a central register. We have posted that position, and that's going to be an important transition for us as we look at how we do our registration of our students and how that coordination moves forward with each one of our buildings. So I share those as just a few examples. I could go on, whether it is the counseling programs 339 plan, which we've had discussions about, or looking at some of the pieces within our academic program. There's a lot of things that aren't always listed with our goals, but our goals do give us focus areas on pieces that we want to make sure that are in the forefront as we move forward as a district. And we also, our goals give us an opportunity and a recognition that we can't do everything at once. Last year we set goals, and then I think by the next month we had added a few items to those goal areas pretty quickly. We want to make sure that we are focused each year and looking for the long term for those things we want to tackle and how best to tackle those items to continue with the continual improvement of our district and not to rest on our laurels and really be focused on continuous improvement. So the challenge and support all students, that sheet that I shared with you gives the details of what is behind that. Last November, we had our administrators come forward and they shared with us the data that was behind looking at challenging all of our students, the importance in our district of making sure that our students at every level are being challenged appropriately, and that we are looking at all the right data to identify whether we are challenging our students at every level. We've discussed that idea of the importance of unlocking the potential in all of our students, and that academic potential in our students is a priority for us as a school district. So we will be hearing from our principals in November from the outcomes of those plans that they put in place last year, and also we will be hearing from our principals some of their suggestions for this year's plans when it comes to challenging all students. We have added 2 additional areas in there and looking at improving writing K-12, and we also added a piece in there about looking at equity, making sure that our programs are not only challenging all of our students, but that we are understanding and looking at how all of our students are faring within our district. And that is a special focus that our high school has been willing to look at this year that will spread to our other levels in future years as well. The next one on implementing our technology recommendations, the next curriculum committee meeting. I think the board has heard a lot about this, so I won't spend a lot of time, but the technology recommendations that the board supported also looked at a 3-year implementation plan, and there's still more discussion over that K-8 piece that will be happening next month, but to continue along with the focus on those recommendations and also the implementation. Reviewing and implementing our middle school recommendations, again, a fresh topic that we just had a presentation on last month. So it's not only just the review, but also now moving into the implementation phase of those recommendations, and those discussions will continue. And then the study of student wellness. When I sought individual board member feedback and sought individual administrator and individual feedback about things that we need to focus on, one of the topics that kept coming forward from many different areas of our district and our community is the idea that how are our students? How is the mental health? How is the supports that we give? Often in a district like ours, the stress of our students is a concern. All of those pieces that keep coming up, we said, let's try to wrap our arms around it this year about what are the data points we want to look at as a district. What do we want to make sure we're monitoring about the supports that we put in place to support our kids? Let's gather the data, and then once we gather the data, let's look to see what does it mean to us. What are we learning from this data? What do we believe are any other steps we want to take? So we're going to start this year out just gathering that data and having some discussions at the board level about what it all means. And then this is a good example of one that could be a multi-year goal as we look to develop recommendations for the future as we move forward. Under our priority projects, we have some carryovers. We actually, I think have actually been pretty focused with our adolescent sleep. We set up a committee last year. We said that we were not going to discuss this topic, going on, beyond the work of this committee and try to be focused, and that we're going to make a decision, and then we're going to move forward. So that committee was formed last year. The committee has been led by Dr. Robarczyk and currently by Mr. Bechtold, now that Mr. Stango, is no longer part of the district, and so Mr. Bechtold stepped in to chair that with Dr. Robarczyk. This committee, which has been a committee of parents, teachers, students, administrators. We purposely started off our work with this committee, and as you heard from the summary from last month, so I don't want to be repetitive, but to really create an open, balanced committee. We sought parent input about what they thought about this topic. The committee has been tasked with looking at what has been a national discussion. When the American Society of Pediatricians, the American Medical Society, and the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, all come out with statements that high school should be beginning at 8:30, based on the circadian rhythms of the kids and the sleep patterns and what we know about adolescents, it has created discussions for districts across our country to look at this topic. And our committee has done a really good job of diving into all that, bringing in speakers, and as they presented to this board, was it May or June? I believe it was May they presented to the board. It was May? It was May they presented to this board. I think the board really hit the nail on the head when they asked the questions about, okay, we understand all this, but what would be the obstacles? What would be the obstacles if we wanted to make a change with our start of our school day at the high school? And so the committee and the administration is working right now on identifying those obstacles, identifying solutions, potential solutions to those obstacles. And on November 13th, I think somebody mentioned at the beginning that it's November 20th, on November 13th curriculum committee meeting, that committee is going to come forward and share with this board those recommendations, some possibilities for how we can move forward and how we've overcome those obstacles. So the work is still being done right now as we speak. I thank the administration and the committee for all that they're doing. We are not going to be looking for the board to make a decision on November 13th on that evening. That evening is going to start a discussion, and we will talk more on November 13th how that discussion will play out with the board. I would like to say that, beyond this school year, we're going to make a decision, and we're either making a change or we're not making a change, and then we're going to move on. So we're not going to stay, on this perpetually on this topic, and I think we'll be poised to make a decision in this school year. Our capacity study at all three elementary buildings is, again, a carryover, which we want to make sure that we, as a district, are being very purposeful and looking at what we can see on our horizon, both understanding our population now and making sure that we're anticipating our population in the future. And so we will be having further discussions this year with the board about that capacity study. We had some initial at the end of the school year, and the board gave us some feedback on additional items to look into. Evaluating our instructional calendar was a piece that came out from a few stakeholders. Takes some time. It's an interesting topic. Again, I'm going to have the no decisions have been made shirts printed for every one of our topics, because I think people see that and they say, okay, there's already a decision that's made. We're changing the calendar in this way or that way. Have not had any decisions been made or an agenda, except the agenda is that the snow days last year. Different pieces and nuances to our calendar. We did work hard a year ago. I thank Dr. McQuiggan for her work in cutting out many of the half days that we heard feedback from our parents and our school board about some of the half days and the challenges that those presented to our community. So we thought we would take some time to this year, in the fall, to take a deeper dive or a look into our calendar. It's not something that we feel we need to do each year, and see if there's any opportunities and ideas for suggestions. So that committee work is going to be getting underway very soon. And then continue to improve and evaluate our student safety and security. This is an ongoing topic for us as a district to continue to be focused on. We had this past August security meeting where we invited parents, we invited administrators, we had teachers, we had staff there, we had the Radnor Township Police. We had an opportunity to look at what's going well within our security practices. We also had an opportunity to look at what things that, or recommendations that people think that we, in the group that felt we should maybe consider for making changes, and any questions that people had that attended that meeting. All of that information has been now shared with all of our administrative team, as well as our independent evaluations that have taken place from our state police, which have conducted risk and vulnerability assessments of our buildings, the Radnor police information as well that has taken place. And we will be continuing to discuss what changes. We've been making some changes already as we've moved forward, and other changes will be bringing forward to this board. One of the changes in legislation gives us the opportunity as a school board to discuss security in an executive session. That recognition from our state that the priority of security and the priority of having these discussions at times in executive session is important as well, so that some of the things we have in place we don't necessarily want to be sharing publicly, but we do want to let our parents and our community know that the security and safety of our students continues to be a priority, and we'll be continuing to look at that and sharing information throughout the school year. So in a nutshell, are there questions from board members? We'd be looking for a board approval tonight, or that would be to move forward with the identification of our goals for this year.
I have a question about the priority projects. With the exception of the last one, I'm looking at the top three. It's the sleep study, capacity of the elementary schools, and instructional calendar. I want to manage expectations. Do you think any results, any actions taken as a result over the year of our decision-making over the year will be implemented by next fall?
So with the first topic, it's a good question. So with the adolescent sleep and start time, I am more than confident that if we make no change, that we could implement that next fall. I do believe, though, we are at a place that if there is a recommendation for a change, and depending what that is, and again, we won't know until November as we start that discussion, I do believe we could be prepared if we want to make a change to do that at the start of the next school year. So for the adolescent sleep and managing expectations, if there is a recommendation for a change, I think the first goal would be to do that for the start of the 2019 school year.
Doesn't it matter what the hurdles are?
It does. Well, that's why I can't commit. Sure, but I believe our timing of starting this discussion and where we are would give us time to do that. But a lot will depend. Your point is exactly, a lot will depend on what are the hurdles and what are some of the variables that we're looking at. For the capacity study and the instructional calendar, I would say for the instructional calendar, it is possible that we would be in time that if we wanted, that work of that committee will influence the development. Usually we vote on the calendar in December, January timeframe, I want to say. Sometimes we're as late as February, but yeah, I was going to say sometimes we've been as late as February, March. So the work of that committee, I think, will be done in time to influence that calendar. Whether the committee will have any sweeping changes or not, that's to be seen, but I think we would have time to do that for 2019. And the capacity study, I really don't know exactly where that will lead. It'll really depend on where that discussion leads us.
Because my fear is, again, if you have a child who's in an overcrowded classroom, and I'm not saying that's going on, I don't know, but if you find your child in an overcrowded classroom, in an overcrowded school, nothing else matters on this paper. That's the priority. And I would hate to have us ease into the fall of next year saying, we're aware of the problem, you're just going to have to stick it out for another year. That, to me, would be a failure across the board.
We have time coming up in this fall where we always give an annual report about our staffing, and I can tell you that as of August 1st, we were able to schedule all of our classes at this board-identified guideline. So that board-identified guideline of the not-to-exceed number, we were able to schedule our classes at those numbers as of August 1st. But we'll have further discussions about that in the fall.
Okay, are there other questions, Ms. Stern?
Well, it's not so much a question, I think it follows up on Julia's, is more of a comment of, thank you for once again articulating goals and priority projects, because it will help keep us focused this year on what we are and what we are not doing, or what you as a district, you as an administration are doing and what you're not doing, which is really, I think, will hopefully be the thing that will allow the timing to allow for us to talk as a board, to hear whatever it is that, may or may not come forward, and then spend your time focusing on if there's any kind of changes to be made, to take the time, Julia, to your point, so that it's not, something that it's March or April before we get, oh yeah, what are we doing about that thing? No, you're very focused. You're laser focused, 4 items, four goals, 4 priority projects, so thank you. Appreciate the focus. I think that will help keep things moving forward, to address, for one, Julia's concern, if, her comment about timing, which I agree. I think it's well taken.
Okay, any other thoughts?
I had a question about the technology recommendation. The implement recommendation says fall 2018, but you had mentioned, Ken, and I remember seeing from the paperwork that we're actually phasing in certain things over a series of years. So is there any reason why we wouldn't say fall 2018 through 2020 or something like that? Just to remind ourselves that different things are going to be happening at different times over the next 3 years as we evaluate next year what we want to do. That will be an ongoing one to a certain extent, right?
Yes, yeah, no, that's a good point. I think we could adjust that and add the fall of 2018 to 2020, or that makes sense.
Because I think that addendum with the goals, there's 6 different goals that go along with the recommendation, and some of those will be developed over the course of the next 2 years and implemented, I thought I saw maybe even in 2020, 2021. So just putting that out there might be helpful.
Okay. All right. Seeing no other comments, could I get a motion, please, and a second?
I move that we
this?
approve the 2018-19 district goals.
Thank you, Mr. Second from Mr. Miller. And all those in favor, please indicate with a hand vote. All right, the goals pass. Our priority item passes 8-0. All right, next we're going to discuss the Pennsylvania School Board Association PSBA elections. This will be a roll call vote. I believe Mr. Stitzel is going to handle this item.
So, President Solomon, would you like the board to vote on all of them at one time, or would you like to break it out into 10 individual votes for each person?
I believe that all of the offices are uncontested, so if no one has any problem with it, I'd like to vote all at once. Does anyone have an issue?
We have to break out this. We're only doing the president, vice president, the at-large, and Section 8, correct? Do we vote for Sections 2, 4, and 6 if we're not part of them? And then we vote for the at-large because it includes Sections 4 and 8. But what I'm reading from this is that only districts in those sections vote for the at-large. So in my mind, what follows for me is that of the section advisors, we only vote for Section 8, but perhaps I'm mistaken.
Can't we just put a caveat? Can't you just put a caveat on it? I mean,
well, the reason I say that is that Amy would have to recuse herself. Maybe if we do all of them, we do all of them except for Section 8, because Amy...
Why
I don't
can't
think
she
Amy
vote
has to
for
recuse.
Oh, you
She
don't?
can vote for
Paid
herself,
position.
can't she? Well, she can choose.
No. If you're allowed to, great.
Yeah, if she votes
No,
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 we
if
know
you're
how
allowed
she
to,
feels
great.
about it.
It's
She's like, do I really want to go to these meetings?
All right,
Yeah, I
so
don't know if we should vote.
do we know that we
What's your
vote for
platform?
the Section 2, 4, and 6?
Does it matter? Can't we just go ahead and if we erroneously vote for
Well,
people who
right,
aren't
that's what I was
supposed
going
to
to
vote
say
for?
next, but do we know?
Doesn't matter, so maybe we can just
I
hit
agree.
it
I
and go.
don't think it matters. I think if you
Okay.
just vote for the full slate, if you weren't supposed to vote for it, then it just will be a nullity. Yeah.
Right, okay, I'm okay with that.
Okay, Ms. Dunn?
Yes.
we-
Well, how do you want me to, like, what, is there a specific
It's just
phrase you want me
we-
to say, or?
President Solomon, we would need a motion.
Yeah, maybe we should read
And then I'll
this.
do a roll call,
Okay.
either yay or nay.
Yeah, okay, so maybe we should read this and put forth the names of the candidates and then move forward. So this is to elect PSBA officers as authorized in the bylaws that require each member entity cast one vote during the election period, which is from August 24th to October 11th. Ms. Deco, as board secretary, will be casting the vote for the board. I assume that in her absence, we're covered for that?
She will be returning before October 11th.
Thank you. The board will need to decide by majority vote which candidates will receive the board's vote for each office. The slate of candidates for 2019 PSBA offices are as follows. The slate of candidates. President-elect Eric Wolfgang from Central York School District. Vice President Art Levinowitz, School District of Upper Dublin, Montgomery County. Eastern at Large. This includes Section 4 and 8. Is Moira Burry, Upper Marion School District, Montgomery County. The Section 2 Advisor, Thomas Carrick from Kane Area School District, McKean County. Section 4 Advisor, Gary Smedley, Carbondale Area School District, Lackawanna County. Section 6 Advisor, Dan Hill, Westmont Hilltop School District in Cambria County, and Section 8 Advisor, our own Amy Goldman, Radnor Township School District in Delaware County. Do we also vote on the trustee? Okay. PSBA Insurance Trustee, the Insurance Trust Trustees, are Richard Frerich from Penn Manor School District, William S. Lakoff, this is the PSBA past president, and Nathan G. Maines, PSBA CEO. And we vote for 3-year terms.
Move to approve.
Thank you. I have a
Second.
motion from Ms. Booker, second from Mr. Miller, and now we will have a roll call vote.
And if you could respond by either yay or nay.
Yay.
Ms. Bonenberger?
Yay.
Ms. Golden?
Yay.
Ms. Booker? Yes. Dr. Babson?
Yay.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Vice President Stern?
Yes.
President Solomon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Although board action is required, it is generally unnecessary to hold discussion on these items. With the consent of all board members, they are therefore grouped and approval is given in one motion. In the event a board member wants to discuss any item, the board president will move it to an appropriate place on the agenda. Does anyone want to pull any items from our consent agenda?
Yeah, I'd like to pull 10.3, 10.4, 10.5, 13.1, and 13.2. Sorry.
All right, 10.3, 10.4, 10.5.
13.1 and 13.2.
13.1 and 13.2.
I missed something, Mr. Miller?
Ms. Dunn. Okay. Anybody have anything left?
I'm sorry.
Wait, hold on. Ms. Stern?
No, I think there was.
Oh,
13.1 and 13.2? No.
Ms. Bonneberger?
I'm looking at the, we had discussed previously pulling,
It's 13.2 in the policy.
perfect, thank you very much. All done.
Okay, so we pulled that. Anybody down that way?
I do want to make a comment on 14.1. I'm going to make I'm going to ask for a slight edit on the spelling of one of the people's names, but it does not change the approval, so I won't pull it. I just want you to know I'm going to be making a slight change to somebody's spelling after
Okay.
approval. Sue Dahlstron's name is spelled incorrectly. I just
Okay,
wanted to have
well,
it
shouldn't we
correct.
change that now? Yeah.
Sue Darn, I think there's an N instead of an L
Yeah, there is. I saw
in
that
the- in
too.
the spelling of her name. So
Okay.
with that notation, I would keep 14.1 in there.
Okay, did we get that? Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda minus the items 10.3, 10.4, 10.5, 13.1, and 13.2.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Seconded.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Miller and second from Ms. Dunn. And we need a vote now. All those in favor, please indicate with a hand vote. Okay, consent agenda passes 8-0. And Ms. Dunn, do you want to discuss 10.3?
Yeah, I just had a quick question about the Schrader Group. I think Chris Henkel asked about it earlier, and I had the same question. And the Facilities Committee, maybe I missed it in your report. I apologize, Mr. Miller. Do we have any sense of whether, what the timing may be to actually completing the project? I know the Schrader Group report that we got shows quite a timeline, and I understand doing this slowly and taking time and doing it deliberately, but I just wondered if we had any projections for when we might see revisions and especially ADA compliance.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'm going to let Mr. Batchelor answer that one.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. First off, we're not looking to move slowly. I mean, we're just looking, though, to move.
I meant deliberately. I apologize.
But I think your point is a good point, to move very deliberately and make sure that we are doing this well. What the Schrader Group, and I believe is one of your handouts in here, is they put together a timeline for putting together the design and what that timeline would look like for the design aspect, gathering feedback, and developing the design. Once that is completed, we would then look at the next piece of what is the timeline then for what it is that we as a board decide to move forward with.
Have they given us any previews? I mean, if all of this goes to plan and we get a presentation in May and presumably could even vote on it, I'm assuming they can't, maybe they can, get all the bids out over the summer and break ground in the fall. It doesn't seem likely. So I'm just asking, along the lines of what Ms. Bonenberger did with the priority goals, can we give the public some semblance of expectation? It's going to take the next 2 school years. It could take the next 3 or 4. And I know it's all going to depend, again, on what we end up deciding to do.
I would say we need to hold on and let's look at, as this develops with the Schrader Group, we would then be more accurate, be able to give a more accurate timeline of the construction. What I'm leery to do is to pick a date right now and not knowing, or pick a time and not knowing exactly what is going to be developed, what we as a board are going to identify, what is the scope of work. I think once we go through that process, we will be able to identify the most expedient and quickest way to get the work done.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and one of the things that is complicating this a bit is the retaining wall that's underneath the bleachers that holds the pool basically back is moved. We had that inspected and it's fine for now, but it is moving, so that's part of the project, is for them to look at it and see what we need to do.
Yeah, while all of the facility is safe right now, that's a great example, though, of something that was new to the discussion as some additional inspections and some evaluating of the area has taken place.
The timing of hopefully moving forward on an operations director it will be, to say it will be easy enough, it will be easy enough for you to task our new operations manager with, keeping this at the forefront, keeping forward progress on this thing, as best as possible. All due respect, Michelle and Todd have done a great job, but they also have many other commitments that they're staying on top of it. When we're able to get an operations guy in here, and make it clear that this is a priority project. It's not listed as one, but it's important. It's an important project.
There will be many in the administrative office who we celebrate when we get the director of operations position filled, and we have posted that position, and we are in the process now of going through that, seeking a candidate for that position. So, but yes, there will be. It will be something that will be identified, and this will be an important project, and I think actually a very good introduction, to the district for that person.
I have a question on 10.3 too. I was going to pull it as well, and I know I missed the facilities meeting, and albeit available on YouTube, my company blocks YouTube on my laptop, so I can't watch it while I'm at work. Didn't look at it yet, so I'm going to apologize. They block all the good stuff. I'm sorry if this came up during the meeting, but so maybe it's a quick answer, but the makeup of the steering committee is my first question. I see there's 4 meetings on steering committee meetings that go from October to the end of January, and then it rolls right into preparing, 2 months into designing a plan, and then the master plan presented to the school board. What's the makeup of the steering committee? When does the facilities committee get to weigh in so that we don't end up in March completely off track from what the school board thinks we should be doing? Yeah.
So this will be, the facilities committee will be discussing that exact makeup and exactly how we as a board would like to see that established.
Okay. And that'll be at the next meeting?
Yeah. We wanted to approve this before we moved on to step.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Dunn, you want to make a motion, please?
I move for approval of the items under 10.3.
Second.
Mr. Miller, second. All those in favor, please indicate with a hand vote. Motion carries 8-0. That brings us to 10.4. Ms. Dunn.
I actually was following up in 10.4 on a question I raised in the curriculum committee meeting, and I'm not sure if the answer is available.
If you're asking about the books.
Yeah.
So I think that Michelle's absence is probably impacting that, and I don't see Penny here tonight, so I
That's what I was
apologize.
thinking, too.
She may very well have it, and I will make a note and get that answer to you tomorrow.
Okay. Just so people know, so if we're talking code.
Well, we'll report
no.
on it in the finance meeting as a follow-up.
I had asked what, it just seemed like a lot of books, so I just wanted to know if there was some specific clean out or if it was a grade or whatever, so that was the question.
I apologize, no.
Yep,
I will
that's fine.
make sure that we have that answer for at the finance meeting, and
Okay.
we can make it in
Oh, it was
administrative
fine.
remarks.
Sorry, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, does someone want to make a motion? Ms. Dunn?
I move that we approve section 10.4.
Second.
Mr. Miller, thank you. All those in favor, please indicate with a hand vote. Motion carries 8-0, and now 10.5. Ms. Dunn?
Actually, this question was raised by a member of the public, and just given the severity of the concern that was raised, I just want to ask, are we aware, is the administration aware of any kind of conflict of interest with Longstress Sporting Goods that we shouldn't be approving that bid?
I am not aware, and I don't
So-
think we're aware administratively of any conflict.
This question has been raised for the last few years.
Okay, and I just,
No, it has been. So it's my understanding that the owner of Longstreth is a coach in the district. And I forget which one happened first, whether they were a vendor in the district and then the owner became a coach, or whether they were a coach and then became a vendor. I think it was that they were a vendor first and then became a coach. But in the world of, and I'll let Mike maybe answer the concept of conflict of interest, there was full disclosure all the way around. It wasn't that it was not, and I'm not even positive that this person is still coaching. So that part's actually, I guess, technically they're not working for the district right now because isn't baseball a spring sport? So, and I don't think we've approved him on an agenda yet because we haven't done the spring sports. So to the extent that there may be still a question, I don't think it's a question now. Would it be the case, Mike?
You mean whether the person's still currently an employee?
No, I mean, if he was a coach last year, but we
Right.
haven't yet approved him this year as a coach for a spring sport, is there a conflict now with approving Longstreth?
Well, the people who work on supplemental contracts are only employees during the term of their supplemental contract. So,
Right.
So they wouldn't be an employee now.
So that's my point. So they're not technically, it's not technically a conflict now because they're not an employee right now.
Right. So, and I think you've jogged my memory. If this is the situation that did come up a year ago, we had discussed that there was no conflict. We had looked to make sure that everyone fully understood and things were being fully vetted, and that there wasn't any additional merit given or any favoritism or anything like that played into it. So I know that there was discussions a year ago. I don't know if this is that same example or not, but if it is that same example, that we determined that it was not a conflict 1 year ago.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the explanation. Then I would move that we approve and award the athletic supply bids set forth in 10.5.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate with the hand vote. Okay, motion carries 8-0. And that brings us to, 13.1. Ms. Dunn?
So I wasn't going to pull 13.1, but Ken said something that occurred to me. It might be something we need to reference in the policy. Ken, did you say the law has passed that allows us to discuss safety and security in executive session?
Correct. We are now, yes, we now have that ability to
does that need to be added?
We added that in time for the first reading, so that was already in there.
Okay, I missed it in there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, then I move that we approve 13.1.
Thank you. All those in favor, please indicate with a hand vote. Motion carries 8-0. And now 13.2. Ms. Dunn?
So I owe an apology. I was in the process of moving in August, and I did not read all these in detail. I read them overall. So I had a couple of typos. If people don't want to listen to the typos, I'm happy to just give them to Mike Petiti. And then I had a couple things I wanted to mention that were a little bit more substantive.
You know what might be helpful, though,
Yeah.
Sarah, is just that there are certain changes that are substantive, which
Okay.
we would impact on the flow process of approving policies, and there are some that are considered non-substantive. And stuff like typos, just for reference, future reference, because you would ask this question, I don't think would hold up the process, Mike Christofko and Tony, of approving the policies. So if you want to send them maybe to Tony and me.
Well, could I just ask
Sure.
the extent of the typos? Like,
They're,
are we
they're
talking
pretty
two
minor.
things,
In the
or-
graduation requirements, there's a tense change and an extra word.
Okay, so like 2 in that one?
Yep. In
Okay.
the student social events, I actually had a substantive change, but I don't think it's something that would require reapproval. My concern there was that there's not a reference to the volunteers having the state-required clearances. So I think it would be okay if we just add a legal reference to the board policy for volunteers. I talked to Anthony about this before the meeting. I don't know if Mike Christofko thinks that that's a substantive change that requires it coming back before the board.
I don't have that particular policy in front of me, so you want to just add a reference to the fact that
Yeah,
that
there's a student-
volunteers are required to have clearances by law?
Yeah, the student social events references different types of supervision that needs to be at certain student social events, and it doesn't reference that they need to have their volunteer clearances, and I think just belts and suspenders, we probably ought to reference that in the legal references, unless you think there's something more. So in student social events, under the delegation of responsibility on page 2, item 2 talks about the provision of adult or other adequate supervision at the event as required by the circumstances. If we're going to have adult supervision that's non-staff, we need to ensure that those adults have the clearances required by state law.
Well, by our policy.
Right, I'm sorry, by our policy.
Right.
And I
other
think that we
policies
could
cover that already. So the
Right.
fact that it's not there doesn't mean that they don't have to have it. There's a whole
Right,
other
but I
policy
think
that
just
covers
because we've
that.
been trying to be really good, it seemed to me the policy committee had been really good about putting all the proper references under legal references. It seemed to me if we reference the board policy for volunteers, that would ensure that nobody misses that.
So you're not talking about changing the actual language of the policy, you're just talking about putting a new legal reference
Yes.
to just refer back to the volunteer policy?
I think so.
Yeah, that's definitely not a substantive change.
Okay, great.
That's just a citation, that's not.
Perfect. And then there's an extra word in student wellness that I will reference. And I had comments to the administrative regulation, but we don't approve that as a board.
we
So I was
don't
going to send
approve
those
those.
separately. And that was it.
Okay.
But I think Julia had questions about some of the policies before we move to approve it.
I don't know if these are substantive. I don't know if I'm just misunderstanding. But I'll start. There are only 2 policies. One is English Language Development Program. And in it, it says that the district will provide an effective language instruction educational program. And in the next paragraph, it says that the superintendent or designee will implement and supervise an English language development program. And one's an EL, one's an ELD. Are they different programs?
So I think that ELD was supposed to have been changed, because I brought that up at the meeting a month ago. I think it was supposed to have been changed to an English language development program in that paragraph that says the superintendent or designee.
All right, hang on. You're in paragraph 3?
Well, I'm looking at the red line. 138.
Right.
In the very first sentence, it refers to the LIEP. And then I believe in the very next paragraph, it refers to the ELD.
That's a good point, and I think we did discuss that, and I do remember Susan bringing that up, that we essentially are referring to the same concept of a program, but using two different acronyms for that program, unless we're missing something in terms of its legal context. So essentially, I think what you're saying, and that Susan had mentioned, or Julia's saying, and that Susan had mentioned before, the district shall provide an effective English language development program in the purpose, and then the same, refer to it because it's also referred that way in the delegation of responsibility. So that, is it that LIEP is essentially an ELDP, right? Am I right about that? Is there any reason why we wouldn't call it the same 4 words in both paragraphs, just to eliminate that confusion?
I just wanted to, Mr. Diosio looked into it, and it was the way it was written in the federal government plan. So that's why it was left that way. But I can double check with him again tomorrow to make sure that that was the reason why it was not changed. Because he had looked into that once. It was brought up at our policy committee meeting last month. You're correct.
So maybe we can take all of that, would be a non-substantive change, and we can gather all of these and address them.
It would, because whoever mentioned it
post-meeting.
is correct. It's referring to the same program. It's once the English, I'm sorry, let me go back here. The effective language instruction educational program is the same as the supervising the English language development program. So I will double check with him, but I believe the reason was not changed was because it was written like that in the federal law as well. But I can double check. I don't believe that would be a substantive change. And Mr. Christofko can confirm.
Yeah, if all you're going to do is make all of the references the same, then that's not a substantive change. You're just correcting the grammar of the document.
So I have a preference that we use ELD instead of LIEP, because LIEP is too close to IEP for me to be comfortable using that acronym.
But he's got to find it. You've got to find out if Ed is saying that was required because that's how it was written in the law.
Correct. I'm actually sending off an email now.
I understand, if we
to
are
make sure.
going to just go with one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good points. Is there more?
That's it for that one.
Okay,
So we go on to the next one?
please. No, we're going to pass this all at once. She's got more comments.
Just one more. 217, under delegation of responsibility. And I don't know if this is a typo or if this just surprised me. The superintendent or designee shall be responsible for carefully and accurately recording of the student's learning outcomes. Apostrophe S.
I don't know where you're reading now. Oh,
It's the second page. And I thought, oh my God, Ken's going to be so busy. I mean, that's a lot of, is it collective also? I mean, what's really going on here? Just struck me as odd.
It's page 2 of the graduation
of
requirements.
responsibility.
But it's or the
for assignment.
designee.
Okay, so there's one, I mean, I feel a little pedantic and I apologize. It
No,
just
that's
struck me
fine.
as, there's one person who is writing down every kid's learning outcomes. It just was strange to me. I don't
No,
think
I
that's
think-
what happens.
It's actually,
I think the recognition of how overworked the superintendent is a good discussion for this.
Nice
and that
try.
all of the policies are, but no, I mean, I'm having a little fun with that, but no, Mrs. Bonneberger, Julia, you are correct that, it is a piece of these policies and how they're written. It often says superintendent or designee. The reality is, in this case, for carefully and accurately recording, those designee or designees, we're looking at each building's administration and the academic team and the program that's responsible. So there are many people that would be part of that. Does that help?
So you're responsible for making sure it gets done by other
Yes.
people. All right, I'm good with that. Thank you.
But let me ask you a question. It's carefully and accurately recording. Isn't that just talking about the student's report card?
Yes. Yep, and that we have a process and a system to do that, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Along those lines, shouldn't the apostrophe be after the S?
no, I think it's for each student because it's graduation requirement. You have to make sure each student is qualified. So I would like to move then that, subject to the references discussion we've had here, that we approve the policies referenced in section 13.2 of our agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Everyone please indicate with a hand vote. Okay, and that motion passes 8-0. Let's see. Consent agenda. That brings us to the reports from the liaison committees. The first liaison committee is the Delaware County Community College. I am the liaison, and I just want to announce again that the community college will be hosting their annual school board dinner October 24th. You should be receiving your own personal invitation in the mail. However, I was informed this week that mine went to someone else's address, so I want to make sure everybody knows about it in case you don't get your invitation. And please do really consider coming down and just learning what the community college is doing. All right, next committee is the Delaware County Intermediate Unit. Patty?
Nothing that related to Radnor.
Thank you. The Federal Relations Network, Mr. Madden is not here. Does anyone have a report on that item? Moving on. Delaware County School Boards Legislative Council, Ms. Goldman.
The council met on September 12th, and we basically just reviewed pending legislation, and we talked about the Legislative Council's goals and activities for this current school year. And the next meeting will be on October 10th.
Thank you very much. Pennsylvania School Boards Association, Ms. Dunn.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to take my time this week, and I will keep it short as best I can, but I know there were some questions from board members about what the legislative platform was for the School Boards Association meeting in October. I referenced some of this in the curriculum meeting or in the GRCC meeting, but I wanted to discuss it in more detail here. There are 3 key priority issues that the PSBA has set forth this year. They want to address the pension crisis, and in short, they want the state to start helping to fund that and remove some of the burden that has been placed on school districts. They want continued fair financial investments for school districts. So they want fair, predictable, and equitable funding formula, which they're referencing the Act 35 in 2016. Basically, what they're saying is they want not only shared costs between school districts and the state, but they want the state to bear a majority of that. And they specifically want school districts to continue to have, and maybe even have a little bit more flexibility in how they spend the money. There's a real focus on local control within that piece. And then the last of the priority issues was enacting meaningful charter school reforms. They're concerned about operations, funding, and accountability of the charter schools. There are concerns that the charter schools and the educational management organizations don't have to follow the same laws and regulations that a school district do, and yet that a school district does, and yet they can get all the same money. So the argument is that they should have the same financial, academic, and ethical accountability as any school district would if they're taking state money or taking money from a school district, essentially, and that they be subject to the special ed funding formula. Now, those are the key priorities, but there are legislative...
Sarah, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to make sure.
I was going to tell everybody when I was done.
Okay, because
I know there.
I just wanted to know where you saw the fair funding, I guess, before we moved on.
It was on the website. I didn't have this until today, so I read their legislative platform from the website. They referenced specifically the Act 35 of 2016 and the one that's on the website. If it's changed here, I got this at 6 o'clock, so I haven't read it. They had key core legislative principles that they want to underlie, focusing on these priorities. Child-centered public education, strengthening local control of school boards. There's a big push to make sure that school boards have the right to make the local decisions and that it not all sit at the state, or that the state kind of stop interfering as much. There was an argument for increased equity and accountability, and also adequate and equitable funding. If that's changed in the printout, I apologize. There is a printout available if anyone wants to borrow mine, or if we want Patty to get people copies. But it's also available on the PSBA website if people want to read the 14 or 15 pages available to them. I noticed there were some last-minute changes, but I didn't see, Amy, if there was something specific you wanted to flag.
I just wanted to mention in the booklet, one of the proposed legislative priority issues for the 2019-20 session is providing for safe and secure schools. You might have mentioned that, but I didn't hear it, and I
apologize. I did miss that one.
Because I think
you know what? I conflated 2 points. You're right. It is safe and secure schools. The fair financial investment is part of the core legislative principles. Yes, safe and secure schools. So there is actually also a focus on the state prioritizing protecting students and employees and providing funding for school districts to be able to do that, so that, again, the burden doesn't fall to local districts.
So it doesn't include fair funding, because the fair funding discussion is
No,
a much
I
bigger,
apologize.
broader discussion, which I don't think we had complete agreement on this board about how we felt about fair funding.
No, I apologize. They must need to update. I'm going to go back and look at the website, because I wouldn't have written all this down. But you're right, it's not on here. This is specifically safe and secure schools, meaningful charter school reforms, and Pennsylvania's pension funding crisis. So those are the key legislative priorities.
All right, thank you very much. I'm in support of all of those, and I mean, not to start a fight here, but would be in support of fair funding as well, but we'll see where it goes. Is there anything more? Any other questions regarding PSBA? Okay. That brings us to Parks and Rec. Mr. Madden isn't here. Ms. Bonneberger?
I wasn't at the meeting. I think Chuck was, but I will say that it is my understanding that the Parks and Rec has come forward with a plan to build a comfort station at Emlyn Tennell Park, and they will be approaching the Facilities Committee to go over it at the next meeting.
All right, thank you very much. The Radnor Education Foundation, Mr. Miller has an announcement, I believe.
Yes, the REF has hired a new director, and it is Sheila Palmer, which if you have kids of a certain age in the district, you know her pretty well. Her husband was involved in Radnor soccer forever, so she has very little catching up to do if they had hired somebody from outside the district, because the Palmers have been involved for a long time. If you were at any of the open houses that have already been held, she's been everywhere so far at all the open houses, and they're pretty excited to have her on board. And I have no report from the alumni.
Thank you. The Radnor High School Scholarship Fund, Ms. Stern.
Yes, the board met just this past week, and coming soon in a mailbox to you will be their community campaign. It is their single biggest fundraiser. They do really important work that benefits so many of our high school students. And the board has made the decision this year that unfortunately they will not be holding the 4th of July fireworks. It has been an event that they've done for a very long time, but the last few years has been challenging from a weather perspective, and it's really affected their bottom line, and the board made it was a difficult decision for them, very mixed emotions, but they've made the decision for this year that they're not going to hold the fireworks and on the 4th of July, and will instead focus their energy on other fundraising aspects And so, we'll look to see what happens with that. But in any event, please look for your mailboxes and support them generously.
All right, thank you. That is news. Radnor Page, Ms. Stern?
No report.
Thank you. The Radnor Committee for Special Education is Mr. Madden. Is there any report? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to new business. Is there any new business?
This just flies by when he's not here.
Okay, seeing no new business.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do have one board.
Okay.
I'm sorry. You caught me off guard there. Without wanting to make any long discussion about it tonight, I know that we've heard a lot, and I wouldn't have brought this up if it were later. But I know that we've heard a lot in the last few months, lots of conversation about our public comment policy and just public participation and all sorts of things. And I wondered if people on our board have any thoughts on, are we looking for changes? Are we happy with how the policy was crafted a year and a half ago? We took some input from members of the public, but there were different board members on the board at that time. We're trying some new things to be, answer questions. That was actually a pretty big change to the policy, to specifically mention the notion of answering questions, but we're trying different things. Maybe some things work well, maybe other things don't work well. I don't know, but I just wanted to raise, does anybody feeling like we need to do anything with that policy, or continue with it, kind of as it is it working for us? So
I was going to comment. I didn't want to have to pull it to make the comment. So interesting that you're opening the floor on it. The way the policy is crafted.
Patty, hang on. Your mic might not be
enough.
enough.
It's as close as I can get. Okay. The way the policy is crafted enables the board and the committee, the board leadership and the committee's leadership to make decisions about how they run their committees. I think the policy, the way it's written, provides the avenue to do that. So I don't have a problem with the policy. But I absolutely, wholeheartedly, since I've been on this board now almost in my 12th year, believe it's what we do with that in terms of how we engage with our public. And I think that there are many good comments that come from the podium, whether it's here or at our committee meetings or questions or emails that we get from people. And we owe respect to answer whatever we can answer. I realize we don't want to get into a gotcha or whatever, but I would strongly encourage that we become a little more friendly and answer questions when we can answer questions. I don't understand the formality in it all. I think the pendulum has swung way too far the other direction. I realize structure is necessary or things get out of control, but I think we could be a little friendlier, and that is up to the people who are leading the board meetings and leading the committee meetings to do so. So I highly encourage it, found it to be very successful when I was board president and chairs of all of the different committees. Never was an issue for me. So I would encourage that.
Patty, I have a question about that, because one of the things that when we worked on the committee, and I appreciate those comments, our committee meetings are back-to-back, and public comment is, particularly if we end up engaging back and forth, can, cause our meetings to run late. And in fact, they frequently do. So I guess my question, I have kind of two questions about that, because I've struggled with this one in my mind. If we answer questions, should that count towards part of their 4 minutes? Or what happens if we run over on one meeting and then it has the impact of, the next committee meeting runs late? And by the way, I agree with you. And I do try to answer or build answers into my meetings during the course of our discussion when I can, if it makes sense. Can't always do it. And I agree with the notion of being flexible, but the notion of trying to keep on time or, from one meeting to the next, how would you handle that piece then?
But we already did handle it. And it's not like it's a new notion. When I was board president, I answered questions of people who came to the podium. It didn't really add any more time. And I would argue on the committee meetings, at least when I'm there, oftentimes there's one question that's asked at 4 committee meetings back to back. Just answer the question in the first meeting and you save yourself all the time in the next 3 meetings. So it's not to get into a back and forth and a dialogue. I understand that that can be a difficult thing to do and at times could cause problems. So I fully recognize that and respect when people make a decision that they don't want to engage in an answer. I just encourage us to contemplate how could we be still efficient with time, but answer questions if we know the answers. That's all I'm saying.
I think a piece that we've talked about as a board, just over the last year and a half or so that I've been involved, that at each committee meeting, and I think this is in line with our policy, it is up to that particular committee chair and the administrative liaison together, that if they're at the conclusion of public comment, if there's something that can be answered there on the spot, that choice can be made by the committee chair or could be made by the administrator. I think your point about the back and forth, I think, is an important piece of it. And I think the whole reason, and administratively, we went to the writing, to the posting of the listing of the questions, because we thought it would be helpful to the public. It's a lot of work, so I'm happy to not give written answers. I got to tell you, we were answering questions at the beginning of each meeting from the previous month. Those that maybe couldn't have been answered on the spot were being answered. Instead of those being answered at the meeting, they're being given in writing before the meeting. So actually, the public is seeing answers to the questions earlier in this new format of listing the written answers. It also keeps a record of those. But it's work for the administrative team. So, if we as a board want to have a future discussion about that and to move away from that, but we are trying to do that to be more responsive.
So just to put maybe just a different spin on this. So I share with the idea that we really want the public, people who come forward to first of all be included, to be heard, to have their time, to be participants. It's this public meeting. But on the other hand, I tend to prefer not answering questions on the spot for two reasons. One, I don't want to put misinformation out there. Like, I think it's better to think about the question and then have the right person who actually knows the answer formulate the correct response in writing, then there's no confusion. Because I've been at meetings where somebody says, oh, I thought I heard this, and then somebody else goes off in a different way, and we're all left wondering, well, actually, what was the answer? And we've wasted 10 minutes. So just me personally, I like to err on, let's just get the right answer out there. And the other piece to that is to not put anybody on the spot that may have to look back through their notes. What is this exact answer? So that's just a different sort of spin to it. It may not be that simple to just answer something. It might seem simple, but what you heard might be different than what somebody else heard, and then all of a sudden we're spinning into, well, what really is the answer? And I want to avoid that, but so that's all.
No, I think, and I'm hearing the same thing really from both of you.
Yeah.
I really am, that there's a judgment call that has to be made by that chair and the administrator, a judgment call on what things, can be and what things, do we take the time to make sure, we're giving, the proper information to that question. In trying to, keep this organized and trying to keep it in a fashion that, moves us along, we thought the written responses, would try to deliver that, and we're really trying to be proactive with it. We have made the change. Members of the public shared that, it was a little bit confusing because we went to the written answers for the first time last month, and they weren't grouped by, who was writing the questions or grouped by committee. So we are looking for this month to group them by committee. So they'll be grouped by the questions from each committee. If we think the format of answering the questions just verbally is a better format, it's something we can look to go back to do. I think we, though, need to be mindful of a board. I think of all the comments that were shared here, we need to be mindful of what is the work of each of those committees as well and the precious time we have together to get the work done. in those meetings, and how do we make sure that we can work to honor the public comment and also honor responses in a timely fashion and properly, and that also we are honoring what is the work of the agenda that has to get done in that evening as well as we move forward.
Can I I have a quick question regarding the written version. I actually appreciate the written version. One, we had often talked about trying to have an FAQ kind of situation so that anybody could look them up. Are the written versions searchable on our site? So if somebody's looking for, say there was a question about girls lacrosse, and there's an answer to girls lacrosse, and if somebody Googles it on our, is on our site and does a search, girls lacrosse, does that come up?
I'm going to yield to the guru of board docs. I believe it is. I'm seeing a nod. It is. That was part of the thinking behind, again, the reason the questions this first month were actually thematically grouped instead of by committee was the hopes that, well, let's try to put all sports-related questions together. Let's put all curriculum-related questions. So there was some method to the structure. We have switched, though, for next month to doing it by committee, and I'm looking at the nod from Patty that it is searchable on board docs where we're listing those, and those are always there for people
Then
to
I
see.
think it's great that they're in written form. I would appreciate if it continued.
Can I ask a favor in moving it to the, I'm sorry, Mike, did I step on? In moving it to the committees, one of the things that I would want to avoid for people, especially people who are trying to do a search, I sit on 3 committees and often hear the same question in 3 committees. It would be helpful if those answers only appeared once, because if you did a search for football and it appears under all 3 of the committees I'm on, and you think they're going to be different answers, and it looks like it's actually just one set, it would be helpful if instead there were a reference to the main place they were answered. I just think it's a lot of extra text, it's a lot of extra work to go through. There's a chance for, I would just...
You'd like the answers in one place. If a question is answered, I want to make sure I'm clear on this. If a question is asked, the same question is asked in 3 different committees, you'd like the answer to live in just one committee.
That's my personal preference. I don't run the board. I'm just saying I think it would be easier for users of our site not to run a search and go, wow, there are 27 references to this, and it turns out they're only,
So our plan was, let me see if this makes sense. Our plan was that if it's under committee, then by moving it to the committee, that if there's a question that appears in 3 different committees, it'll get answered in one committee. The question will still live under the other committees that it was asked, but on the answer side, it will just say, it would direct you to that other committee for the answer.
That's my thinking, but I'm open to
Yeah,
discussion. And I have to say, I appreciate the written approach. My understanding as a new board member was that this approach was taken in order to help, especially people who didn't attend meetings or people who attended and asked a question but then couldn't come to the next one where it might get answered, that providing this written record of the answers was searchable, was referenceable, and that it kind of gave equity in access to the information. So I appreciate it. I know it is a lot of work for you guys.
I mean, yes, the initiative was to be more public-friendly and trying to provide some organization not only for the public but for the board with the questions and to present it in an organized fashion. Believe me, when I asked my colleagues for advice, and there'd be other superintendents on how do they handle those things, nobody was encouraging me to send out written responses. So it is, I think, it's another example, though, I think that we do go, or we try to go above and beyond to try to be responsive.
I mean, it was interesting to me when I was reading the policy, and I read it when I first joined, but then reading it again, because we had gotten a specific notice in one of our PSBA magazines that there's absolutely no state law obligation to entertain questions at anything other than a regular school board meeting. So then I really actually applaud whoever came up with that piece, that we allow the public to participate by asking questions at all the committee meetings. I think that's a lot more open and forthcoming than state law certainly obligates us to do.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with everything that's been said. No, I really like the written answers the way we have, especially, I know it takes a lot more work on behalf of, the admin folks that are doing it, but I like having the answers written because it also cuts down on the administrative remarks. Okay, these are the questions from last month, and 10 minutes later, Michelle or Todd are done reading them. You know, it's on there on the website forever so that anybody can go look at it. I think that's good. You know, I mean, and I try to answer some of the questions we can sometimes at the meetings. The problem is, you know, it's like Lydia was saying, though, you know, people will answer a question they think they know the answer to, and it's wrong.
Right.
You know, because yeah, because then you have to come back the next month and be like, you know, the school buses are actually yellow, not blue. You know, so.
Yeah, I'm glad that the discussion came up because one of the concerns I had was what I felt like was inconsistency. You know, some committees would answer questions and some committees wouldn't, and some committees would answer them in the midst of the question being asked, and some people would answer them after the public comment period was over. Some people would answer them in the midst of the discussion. And I just think as a board, we should try to, even though the policy does allow us to have some individuality to our committees, I think in the interest of managing expectations and coming off as a cohesive and unified board, we should kind of decide, at least loosely, you know, how we want to handle this so we can all sort of be following relatively the same practice. That would be my preference. Also wanted to point out in our policy, the questions are supposed to be directed to the presiding officer, okay? And it's been my experience that when questions come up, they may be directed at the presiding officer, but it's not uncommon for other members of the committee to be answering the questions. I don't know if the decision about whether to answer the question in the moment also goes along with the presiding officer, although I think it does. So I would just also ask, as a matter of cohesion and uniformity for the board, that we honor that part of the policy too, that the presiding officer has the authority to decide how to manage public questions in a meeting, unless anybody has any objection, but that's what I believe our policy says. Because again, it can cause some inconsistency on the committee if the presiding officer has consciously decided that question, that the person doesn't feel comfortable answering that question, and then a committee member does answer it. It's a little bit awkward, frankly. So I think maybe that's a conversation for us in our individual committee meetings to talk about how we want to do that so that we're all on the same page. That's just more my goal, is everybody being on the same page. The other thing I just wanted to mention in recognition of this new process of writing answers to questions is that in August alone, there were 42 questions. So to me that, you know, and they're all good questions, but I just wasn't sure if anybody else besides me had noticed that there were 42 questions in 1 month of meetings that the administration had to respond to. So I do, and when you said it's a lot of effort on the part of the administration, I wanted to acknowledge that because 42 just seemed like a lot. Not saying that it's too many, but it is a lot of work to answer 42 questions in a month. So I just wanted to say thank you, I guess, I know it's all well-intentioned. You're doing your best to try to address any public concerns that come up. So those are my thoughts on 006.
Well, I don't know if I just wanted to, I mean, I know I brought it up. I would not have done it if it had been any later. I thought it was helpful for us to maybe kind of talk about how this is working for us and, you know, even just a couple of the minor suggestions and, you know, certainly an opportunity to thank Ken and the administration for the efforts you put in answering. I did not count that it was 42. I just saw that it was long. So there wasn't anything to do. I just thank you for being part of the conversation. Appreciate it.
May I add something?
Sure.
I'm happy that so much thought goes into this response, this whole discussion. Everyone sort of has their own approach, and it's coming from a place that's very well thought out, and I appreciate that. Having said that, nothing for me is more uncomfortable than being at a board meeting and having a member of the public come up and ask a simple question when we all know the simple answer and staring like a brick wall. I mean, it is the most pompous feeling in the world. I'm not comfortable being a part of that. I don't think anyone wants to feel that way. And I prefer a system where if the answer is accessible and easy and simple, by all means, answer the question. This is the public. This is who we serve. They don't serve us. We're here for them. They're not here for us. This should be friendly. This should be easy. And if there's anything that we can't answer, we can say, we don't know the answer. Can you get the answer later, and pass it off that way? I just hate to have these ironclad rules that really hamper communication, hamper a flow back and forth, and it discourages people from coming to ask questions. It really encourages people to come to the podium and rant, because that's all they're allowed to do is come and rant. They're not allowed to get a response. So I just hope we all are sensible enough to be flexible is all I'm asking for.
I do think that there was some confusion about, at one point, we weren't supposed to answer questions until I do think there's been confusion. I'm glad we're talking about it, and I hope that we can be more uniform and more flexible and decide, as committees and the full board, how to do this better going forward and more uniformly.
Yeah, so I wasn't going to comment on it, but the problem is the uniformity, because then all 9 of us need to agree exactly how every committee is going to run, and that takes away the autonomy of individualized committees. The policy is written to provide the flexibility. I think we need to leave it at that. I totally agree we should be following the policy. I don't think we should be breaking policy. But the way it's written gives some flexibility. Otherwise, I wasn't going to approve 006 because we fought hard to get to a place where we could all get behind the language that was in it, and that flexibility was really important. So I get it that the community might have a different experience from one committee to the other, but I think that's just the nature of how it flows. And some committees are easier to answer questions than in others, right? It's just it's the nature of it. So,
Patty, I have to, knowing how hard we worked on that, we really did come to a place where individual committee people, that flow and that flexibility was really how we found the common ground when we worked hard on 006. So anyway, I think Lydia was going to say something, but I agree with Patty in that respect. So I'm not sure what you mean by uniformity. And
I think, let me clarify. It could be my misunderstanding, but for the time that I've been on the board, despite the policy, I believe that I've heard conflicting sort of directives about how to handle that. And as I said, it could be my mistake and misinterpretation. I've wanted to answer some questions, but I'm at certain times, and then I'm not sure because there's also this incredible time pressure, and I have not been sure how to handle that. So if what we're saying is that we can go back to having the discretion as an individual committee based on what our policy says, I'm all for that. And I can discard what I thought was some other directive I got some time ago that I was trying to follow. I would much rather follow the policy, have the discretion, and if that's uniformity, that we're all following the policy, that's the kind of uniformity I'm talking about.
But I would also say within the context of, we do have a tight schedule of committee meetings, and we do, each of us as chairs has I think somewhat of a responsibility to try to stay as close to, the schedule as possible out of respect for the administration, the administrative liaisons, the, student reps, the teacher reps,
each other.
Each other, but, the impact of, if the first committee were to be one that was a back and forth, and ran consistently late, that would have a different impact, a different impact. So I think that it's both. And we're all learning and trying, and that's why I brought this up tonight to kind of talk about that a little bit. But anyway.
Okay, so great thoughts, and I think it's clear that at least I'm taking from this a sincere effort to really try to finesse this, and also I want to commend the administration for really going above and beyond to, try to satisfy this. This has been an ongoing thing, I think, for many years that I've been on the board, and maybe it's still a work in progress, but I think we're in a good spot. So thank you, everyone, for your thoughts. All right, that brings us to board announcements. Let's see. Finance Committee will meet on October 9th at 5:30, and the Facilities Committee will meet immediately thereafter or no later than 6:30, also on October 9th. On October 16th, Government Relations will meet at 4:30, Curriculum Committee at no later than 5 p.m. or immediately following the conclusion of Government Relations if that's earlier. Correct? Or not? Are we sticking with 5 o'clock? It doesn't matter. We'll sort that out. And Policy Committee at 6:30, because I hate to say, I think Curriculum Committee probably won't end early. We never do. And our business meeting for October will be on the 23rd at 7 p.m. in this room. That brings us to our last section of public comment. Citizens are encouraged to address the board at this time to comment on matters of concern, official action, or deliberations which are or may be before the board. Speakers are respectfully requested to avoid redundancy and to please limit their comments to issues for which there was no previous opportunity for remarks. Please print your name on the sign-up sheet at the back of the room. Clearly state your name, street address, and the topic to be addressed. Individual comments, again, should be limited to no more than 4 minutes as per Board Policy 006. And again, should you be unable to attend this board meeting, you may submit your comments by email to boardquestions@rtsd.org or in writing to Mr. Michael Petiti, Radnor Township School District, 135 South Wayne Avenue, Wayne, Pennsylvania, 19087. And again, our current procedure is that administrators will review the questions and the corresponding answers will be posted on the district website, Board Docs, by the start of the first committee meetings of the following month. Is there any public comment?
Judy Sherry, Governor's Circle, Newtown Square. Because I was unable to finish my comments in the beginning of the meeting, I would like to comment on the agenda item 10.3, approval of contracts or agreements. This includes approving pizza, water, ice, yogurt, and bread and rolls, which are, I guess, purchased from these different companies and then sold to the students. So it's not really costing the district any money. I don't know if it makes the district any money. But I would like to tie that purchase to the Policy 272 Student Wellness and the AR 272 in Student Wellness. There is considerable time in these policies that address nutrition, which is all about healthy eating, proper nutrition, nutrition education, consistent nutrition messages that are disseminated and displayed, encourage whole grains, fruits, vegetables, legumes. We say all that. And yet last year, the district purchased and sold to the students $18,975 of Jack and Jill ice cream, $69,000 for one pizza group and $26,000 to another company for a total of $95,649 in pizza and $6,444 of SoFun yogurt. Also, we purchased, according to tonight's, bread and rolls from Mojito or from this bread company. I'd like to know exactly what that is because I've never seen bread and rolls really sold to students. So I don't know if that's really bread and rolls or not. Maybe the board can answer that. What I'm wondering, however, is when you talked about parents and students, what they're suggested to bring in for fundraising are frozen bananas, fruits and or vegetable baskets, fruit smoothies, fruit popcorn, fresh and exotic fruit trail mix. That's what we tell parents that they should be bringing in. And I'm just wondering, is the district sending the right message with this kind of a purchase in pizza, ice cream last year, I guess not this year, yogurt, and whatever these bread and rolls are? Are we sending the right message? So does the board believe supplying all these food items on tonight's agenda sends the best message to students about proper nutrition and avoiding unhealthy food items? Does the district put the same expectation on itself as it does on parents and students? And also, I'd like to speak on 13.2 policies for second reading and booster club, football. Football coaches continue to earn more than other coaches. Number one. Number two, varsity football was one of the few teams not reporting any contributions from booster clubs. I've mentioned this a number of times in the 16-17 Title IX financial reports listed on the district's website, including financial reports are supposed to include booster contributions. Will this information be reported this year, and will the district send an amended report for previous years that includes the football booster club's contribution? Including booster club's contributions is fundamental in understanding fairness in funding between boys and girls sports. And a final comment related to football. There are at least 10 coaches listed as part of the 2018 Radnor football coaching staff on the official website of the Radnor Gridiron Booster Club. There are at least 10. But tonight, salaries for 7 coaches are listed on the agenda. Are the other 3 listed on the Booster Club's website, including the offensive line, defensive line coach, the defensive line, offensive line coach, and the running backs, linebackers coach? Are they volunteers or are they paid in some other way? So that's my question related to that. And related to tonight's discussion,
I'm sorry, Ms. Sherry, your 4 minutes has concluded.
Related to tonight's
Please wrap up
discussion,
your
however,
comments.
I just would like to make this very short. Oftentimes, as I mentioned, the responses to questions are not particularly satisfactory, and they don't respond to the questions, which I can give you at least 4 examples from one page tonight where the question was asked but was not answered in the answer. So if you think that this is a satisfactory way of responding to questions, I think that that would be questionable. And I have to say, I'm pleased with some of the discussion tonight, but really recognizing that the public is bringing forward ideas from Radnor to you board members, and that feeling like they're being listened to and addressed in a significant, worthwhile way is really important to the public. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sherry. Is there any other public comment?
Roberta Winters, 326 Williams Road, and as someone who served on that committee, which went through this public comment stuff for a very long time, I would like to make a couple of suggestions. And one is at the bottom of the comment, under public comment, you say the administrator will answer unanswered questions and corresponding answers, because you're not going to answer everyone, only the unanswered questions in writing. I would also suggest that you consider the nature of the committees as to the types of questions that may or may not need a certain type of response. For example, when I've sat at finance committee meetings and someone's asked a specific question about a specific line item or what the sum of the 3 numbers is, you can get a quick factual answer. When you're trying to do something like evaluate the middle school program, that's much more complex. So I think you really need to give that flexibility to the chair, because really it does depend on the nature of the meeting and the content. So that I think you really have to have that flexibility, which I think several of you board members mentioned. And I also would like to encourage the chairs to really think carefully about the nature of the agenda items on your meeting, because many times significant items need to be addressed in a special meeting. The curriculum meeting runs over frequently because you're dealing with the heart and soul of the district. When you're dealing with a budget item, you have a special budget meeting periodically when it's a big deal. before approvals. Think before you put those items on the agenda. Do you really need a special meeting, or can we deal with this in a 45-minute meeting, considering you got 15 minutes of public comment? So really think, be proactive instead of reactive. I think it'll make the public feel a lot better, and I think you'll feel better too. The last comment I have is I'm also, among other things, on the Radnor Hall of Fame Committee, and I just wanted to mention that that event is going to be held in November, so I want to make sure you put it on your calendars on Saturday, November 10th at 10 a.m. at the St. David's Golf Club. The Radnor Hall of Fame induction will be held, and there will be events at Radnor High School on the previous day, which will be Friday, November 9th. And I would hope that you would check the district website for all the information you need and consider attending, just as you recognize the high school semifinalists, the National Merit Scholars. These are people who have made Radnor what it is today, and you need to celebrate them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Winters.
Cindy Spurtle, 106 Valley Forge Terrace, Wayne. I thank you for the discussion this evening about public discussion. The idea of answering the questions in writing and posting them, I think, is a good idea. The timing is crucial. The timing this past answer period was right before, like 2 or 3 minutes before the meeting took place. Not enough time for the public to be able to know that the question they asked in prior meetings was actually answered. Therefore, the question was asked again. So once again, remembering that the public needs, as with the agenda and all attachments for the meeting, those members of the public that prepare for the meetings need to have them in a timely manner. That also would help. The other, I thought, was a good point that Dr. Winters brought up as to what is actually being discussed and on the agenda. When you have an item like sleep study, or when the school's going to open or not open, or a hot topic in the community, you know that you're going to have a lot of public participation, and that, I think, should enter into your decision as to how much you want to include on that agenda. It isn't always the public, though, that is the reason for meetings going over the allotted time, because I've attended many meetings in the past years, and it isn't always that public that gets blamed for making the meetings too long. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Birtle. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimously, 8-0. Thank you, everyone.